Well, thanks for joining us, folks. This is the Stay Off My Operating Table podcast. And I think, Phil, I could be wrong, but I think today is a first for us. I think this is the first time we've done a second interview with a guest.
I think you're right, and there's a very good reason for it. And this is a great one to start with because the guest we have on today, Vinnie Tortorich, is worth. If I could have him on a weekly basis, I think I would because he's just one of the great ones. But he's got a great new project that we want to talk about, and that was certainly worth bringing Vinnie back on. I don't think you need to introduce yourself to anyone, Vinnie. I think our audience is very familiar with you, but just in case we got some newbies that are joining us, why don't you let them know a little bit about how you got where you are?
That's an interesting thing. There's an old saying, this rancher was driving and checking his fences out in central Texas, and he got to one of the fence posts and he saw a turtle up on the fence. And he said to the turtle, "Turtle, how did you get up onto this fence post?" And the turtle said, "I don't know." And he goes, "Turtle, how do you plan on getting off of this fence post?" And the turtle said, "I don't know." And I think about that all the time because I'm not sure how I ended up on the fence post, to be honest. And if I'm being perfectly candid, um, I started podcasting about 12 years ago when no one knew what a podcast was. Well, you got to think back, you go, "Oh, come on, 12 years." No, literally, I would mention to people I'm doing a podcast and they would go, "How does that work?" And I was like, "Well, it's kind of like a radio show, but on the internet." And they would go, "Well, who can hear it?" And it's like, "Well, anyone who finds it. It's on Apple iTunes." That's the only place. It was that long ago. I used to say we started podcasting when people were still hand cranking podcasts, kind of like you would start an old car with a hand crank. And I, I, I started the show for one reason and one reason only. It was because I had written a book, and the people over at William Morris Endeavor, one of the biggest talent agencies in the world, they wanted to represent the book, and they said, "We love this book, but we Googled you, and you do not exist on Google." And they said, "You need to figure out how to make yourself known to Google." And I literally went home and Googled how to become famous on Google. And basically, they were telling you have to become viral on YouTube. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not a hot chick in a bikini, and I can't teach a squirrel how to water ski behind a remote control boat. So I don't know how to become viral. And one of my nephews said to me, he goes, "Do a podcast." And I was like, "What are these words you're putting together? Pod and cast? And what is that?" He goes, "Well, you used to have a radio show in New Orleans. So you can podcast. You actually know how to communicate." And he told me, he goes, "Most people doing podcasts have no idea what they're doing. So you will go right to the top of the charts." And I was like, "Wow, you really think so?" And he goes, "Yes. People are just fumbling around and you know how to do radio." So within a week, maybe 6 days of hearing the term podcast, Anna Vocino and I put out our first podcast, and the rest is history. And I told your audience that story for a reason. I was doing something to sell something. What I did not expect to do was to introduce low carb to a new world. And I say a new world, but because I didn't invent low carb. We could go way back to Otto Warburg, or we could go back further than that to where people just ate meat. You know, I didn't invent keto, but myself, Gary Taubes, Nina's book wasn't out yet. I know all of this sounds hard to believe, but I think Gary Taubes was like the only kind of, other person I knew out there that was kind of, that was doing this stuff. And I was loath to use the word ketogenic on the show or in my book. And the reason for that was because I thought every doctor in the world, like you, Philip, would go, oh, he's telling people to go into ketoacidosis. He's trying to kill people. And so I left the term ketogenic out of everything. And then before long, other people were coming around and glomming onto this. And, you know, the word ketogenic was out there, right? And then ketogenic became keto, and the rest is history, as you can see in the documentary.
Yeah,
So,
and
go
to
ahead,
get
Phil.
to, yeah, we'll sort of segue into the documentary there. So, as we look back at, you started doing documentaries in addition to the podcast and after the book. And of course, the first one is kind of right behind you there for anyone watching on YouTube, Fat, a Documentary, and then Fat 2. And those both really kind of told the story of how we got here with the low fat diet, the food pyramid, the dietary guidelines, and exposed the truth behind that. And really, I would say expose the lies behind that is maybe a better way to say that, or the mistruths. And then, of course, in your third documentary, you then turned your attention to the kind of fake food, especially fake meat industry, Beyond Impossible. And now, your new documentary is called Dirty Keto. And so people may be saying, whoa, Vinny was just here telling us how, he promoted, popularized the ketogenic diet in many ways. And now he's kind of turning that questioning lens upon it. So maybe give people a little idea about how this fourth one came about.
Yeah, and by the way, Jack, you may not know this, but Dr. Ovadia and I met when I was out pushing Fat, a Documentary, the first one. And look, I never meant to become a documentarian. As a matter of fact, I would never. That's not part of my title. People started asking me, "Hey, you need to do the opposite of what the health and some of these propaganda films. Hey, they're lying. Why don't you lie in the opposite direction?" It's like, whoa, 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 whoa. You think one lie begets a different lie? No. What if I just go out there and tell everyone the truth? Right? I'm always looking for the truth. And you guys had mentioned Kate Shanahan off the air. Kate and I recorded last week, and she said, you would have been the world's best scientist because you never have anything in your head other than looking for the truth, looking for, because there is a universal truth to everything. And I wish that a vegan documentary would come out and say, look, this diet, if you eat a whole food vegan diet, you're doing a heck of a lot better than if you're out there eating processed junk food, just whole food. That's one thing. But then they would have to tell the truth. But leaving out animal protein means that you're really doing yourself a disservice. There's some vitamins you can't get, namely vitamin B12. And you would have to take so much pea protein or hemp protein or some kind of protein to even get into the ballpark of getting enough protein per day to function correctly. But I decided to tell the truth in that movie. And because I did that, it became a juggernaut. That's why the poster's behind me. And look, how many people do a sequel to a documentary? That's you never hear that, right? But Gravitas Ventures was like, hey, this is the #1 movie we've ever put out. Would you mind doing a sequel? And we all had time during the pandemic, and I was able to do that. So how does that relate to what I'm doing now? You go, wait, Dirty Keto, you're going after you? Well, no, I'm not going after me. And I'm not going after anyone who's doing low carb correctly. What happened was, and you guys saw it when you watched the documentary, is as soon as you turn ketogenic into keto, now you have something that industry can grab onto and go, okay, now we need to come up with keto foods that are shelf stable that we can now sell to the general public, because this word keto is really big. And that was the kicking off point to the movie.
I think it would be worthwhile to just give us 2 minutes on the little health journey that you had that put you here, and then we'll dive deeper into the latest documentary.
Yeah, in 2007, turns out I had a real mean round of cancer. I had leukemia, and they, with leukemia, they caught it pretty. It was a curable form of leukemia, but when they finally figured out what was wrong with me, they caught it late stage. So the doctor said to me, she's like, "I'm not worried about the cancer killing you. I'm worried about the treatment killing you,
Yeah.
because we have to do, we have to give you a crap ton of chemotherapy to try to beat this. And you could die from any kind of infection that comes in, right? Um, they told me you can't be around your dogs. Do not hug anyone. It's kind of like COVID protocol now, or the way it was. You have to wear a mask around people. You can't leave the house. You can't do all of this stuff. So I was doing that. As a matter of fact, a good friend of mine, her dad had the same leukemia that I had, late stage. He didn't make it. His PICC line got infected, and that was enough to take him out. His body could not fight it. So that's always the problem. Well, I got to live, and I was in Hollywood at the time. I was still living in Beverly Hills. And my doctor, once I was getting better, every one of my hoity-toity clients were saying, "Hey, you need to have 8-10 ounces of wheatgrass per day, and you need to be juicing around the
Oh,
clock. And, hey, have you ever heard of, just eating straight ginger juice or drinking straight ginger juice?" I'm like, all of this sounds pretty horrible. My stomach I would be throwing up for the rest of my life, because I've had an ounce of wheatgrass. You burp that for the next 2 days.
ugh.
I couldn't imagine your stomach is trying to reject it, right? So I was like, I couldn't imagine 8 ounces a day, not to mention the cost of it. And I was like, I can't afford this. So on one of my last visits with my oncologist, I said to her, I said, "Is there any truth behind this wheatgrass stuff, or the juicing, or the vegan, or any of it?" She goes, "Nah, no, 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 nothing at all." And I'm getting ready to walk out of her office, and she says to me, she goes, because one of my celebrity clients got me to this woman. That's how I was able to get the top person at Cedars-Sinai. She goes, um, "You keep people on these low carb protocols to get them to lose weight for movies, right?" And I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Do you do that yourself?" And I said, "No, I ride the bike all the time. I'm a big time cyclist. I need carbs to cycle," because that was the thought pattern. I said, "But when I'm off the bike, I eat a lot of meat. I eat a lot of fish. I eat a lot of chicken, just to get that protein in there, keep my body going. But on the bike, I feel like I need sugar." And she goes, "Well, maybe you should get off the bike and just, eat the way you tell your clients to eat, because
Hmm.
we are learning right now that, cancer feeds on sugar." Now, by the way, this is 2007, and no one was talking about that. But in the background, oncologists knew this, right? This was coming down the pike. And I said, "Really?" And she goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, you said my cancer was going to come back." And she said, "Yeah, it'll be back 5 or 6 years. It'll be back. And we'll just knock it back again before it gets out of hand, and you'll be fine." And I said to her, I said, "What's the longest you've ever seen?" She goes, "Some studies. Sometimes people go 8, 9 years, but don't expect that. Expect 5 or 6 years." And I was like, "All right, okay, that sounds about right." Well, long story short, I just finished chemo again in 2024. I went 17 years with no chemo. And they took me off of all of the drugs that, they give you all these prophylactic drugs now, just so that you don't get infected and all this. My neutrophils came back. It's supposed to take months to come back. They came back within weeks. And I was able to exercise through chemo. I went for an infusion every day, and I came back and either got on my spinner or my rowing machine and was able to continue to exercise through chemo, right? This is all recent, right? I'm still not out of the woods yet. My red blood cells and white blood cells are still whacked, but my neutrophils are in such a way that I'm able to leave the house. Nothing like this happened the last time when I was, still eating sugar. Now, I'm an N1 experiment, right? But I don't know if you guys ever had Michelle Hearn on the show.
No.
You should have her on. Her wife had stage 3 or 4 breast cancer. Same thing. She went strict keto. They had very clear margins. They were able to, give her less chemo than they thought they would need to. She healed much faster. Yet not one doctor will ask us how we're doing this, right? My doctor just scratched his head and went, this is amazing. Isn't it? Your numbers are popping back. You're a strong guy. That's all he said to me. And I have one of the top guys, everyone thinks their doctor's the best. I have one of the top guys over at UVA, and UVA is no BS, program when it comes to cancer, right? So no one's asking how this is working. They're just going, your numbers are popping back. And they took me off of all of the prophylactic drugs and everything else, which I think I've said already. So that's my story. 17 years. That's 3 times the length of time they told me I would go before I needed chemo.
So it sounds like, though, from your story there, that over the 17 years, despite the fact that we're gathering even more and more evidence about, the benefits of low carb diets, ketogenic diets in cancer. I know you've spoken with Tom Seyfried a number of times, and we've had him on as well. And, my impression, maybe it was more my hope, was that this was becoming more accepted in the oncology world. But it sounds like your experience 17 years later now, between, your 2 bouts of cancer, there wasn't much interest from your doctors about this.
No, it wasn't that there wasn't any interest. It was that they didn't even ask the question, or he did make, because it turns out, he rows also. We row at the same club here in town. And he's a very fit guy. He's in his 50s and he's incredibly fit. And he made note of me being incredibly fit when he saw me. You don't see 61-year-old guys that are pretty ripped out coming in with cancer. And so he made note of that. He never asked what I ate, how I ate, nothing. And I didn't want to be that guy with the tinfoil hat going, oh yeah, here's what I did. No one really cares. You know what I mean? It's like, look, you're a doctor, Phil, you guys are busy, right? You're trying to get through your patient list. And I feel that with doctors. I feel like these guys got A, B, C, and D, and they got to go into the next room. I don't want to sit there and go, hey, listen, doc, sit down. Let me school you up on something that you're not going to believe. Right? He's just going to yada yada me and get me out the room and go, yeah, that's good for you. Keep doing that. But no one's going to go check. Would you agree? Or now I feel like I'm interviewing you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I do think that's a central problem. I always say that, doctors are just way too busy to be paying attention to what's going on around them. And, thankfully, maybe a few of us are paying attention. But for the most part, everyone just kind of, like you said, trying to get through their day. And I don't think that's unintentional, by the way. I think that's the way the system likes it. The system doesn't necessarily want doctors asking questions and thinking about things like, how do we keep people from getting sick in the first place? And how do we maybe actually cure diseases instead of just keeping the customers for life as it is? So it's a valid point. I don't think it excuses my colleagues, to be honest. And I know I've certainly ruffled a few feathers these days and in the past years saying things like that. But, like you said, there is a truth. And I think whether you're just an honest documentarian or whether you're a physician, we all should be seeking that truth, and we got to go where that truth leads us ultimately.
You're right, Philip. But when you look at, like Mark Cucuzella, his own, colleagues want to kick him out of his practice, and
Yep.
Trochalazian has gone on his own, and Brian Linsky's, and all these guys who said, I'm tired of sick care. I want to do healthcare. I want to get these people healthy. Well, you can't do that within an organization. You have to break away and be willing to, put a stake in the ground. You can go back to Robert Atkins, who's, the current forefather of the low carb diet. The way do you know the story? Do you know how he figured it out? Do you?
Somebody told us, but I don't remember. We had actually had somebody on who gave us the story, and I've forgotten who it is.
Well, I'm going to paraphrase it, but one of his patients came in who was morbidly obese, came in a year later, and the guy was perfectly normal weight. And he goes, "My God, what did you do?" And he goes, "I read Banting's letter on corpulence, and here we are." And he was like, "Oh wait, I've heard of that, but I've never." Like most doctors, doctors will poo-poo it or forget about it or something like that. And but he wrote it down and went home and found Banting's. There's no computer back then. He couldn't Google it.
Yeah.
He found Banting's letter on corpulence and said, this might work. And it turns out, I think it was two different patients, and the two patients knew each other, and they both lost weight. So he was like, well, this is an N2 experiment. So let me look into this. And there we have it, right? Before you know it, he's regurgitating what Banting wrote way back when, and, calling it the Atkins diet, which I'm glad he did. But then everyone called him a kook and, a charlatan and everything else. So as a doctor, do you want to go down that road of being a kook or a charlatan? And look at everyone who's done any, William Davis, wheat belly guy. People call him a kook, and Perlmutter. They call all of these guys nut jobs, right? But are they? Because they're looking at the same stuff, right? And you can say the same thing about Dr. Cardane, who brought forth the what was he calling it? The paleo.
Paleo.
This is all in the same ballpark. Paleo, NSNG, low carb, Atkins. People always ask me, what's the difference? It's like, it's just a different name. Call it what you want. Now some people are doing carnivore, right? And I get asked about that, and it's like, yeah, I'm fine with it if you want to eat meat around the clock. I tend to like to have a vegetable or two, and so you could do it 20 different ways. There's not one way to do it, but most doctors are not like Atkins. They're not going to look into it.
I couldn't help but wonder as I was watching the documentary, Dirty Keto, why? What triggered it? What led you to decide, I think I'm going to explore this? I mean, if you were somebody who didn't know anything about the low carb lifestyle, it would make sense, but you've been doing this forever. What was it that motivated you to do that?
A few things kept coming around. KetoCon was one of them. Philip, I think you were just there the other day. And as you notice, they're rebranding that. They were calling it KetoCon / Hack Your Health, which, KetoCon was such a much better name. I don't know why they're changing it, because they're worried about the negative connotation, I'm guessing. I love Robin Switzer. I'm guessing she licked her finger and stuck it in the air and saw which way the wind was blowing. It's like, oh, keto has a dirty connotation to it now. So she's trying to change that. I'm guessing that's what she's doing. But my first thing was going to KetoCon. I was going there every year to give talks. Notice they didn't invite me back this year. And I would notice that all of the kiosks out away from where we were on stage talking, everybody was now doing, this is no carb and low carb, and kind of almost a carb. And I started hearing new words like allulose and monk fruit and, sucralose and, aspartame and just all, all these different words, right? And of course, I jot everything down and go look it up later. And I also noticed, and God, I love Robin to death, but she hates when I say this. Whenever I would go to the bathroom at KetoCon, I noticed that all the toilets look like a Jackson Pollock. And I hate to be crude on your podcast. It's like everyone here seems to have the craps, right? They all seem to have the squirts. And it's like, oh, they're sampling all that stuff and is sending them right to the bathroom, right? And nobody else would walk into a bathroom and go, what's going on here? But I did. So it's like, wow, all of this fake stuff. And then I started seeing, because of that, I started looking around. When I go to the grocery store, since I go right to the meat market and out, I started walking up and down aisles when I had a chance. And I started seeing something called net carbs. And I saw something that said keto-certified. And I was like, whoa, what do we have here? And so I picked up the product and it said keto-certified right there on the deal. And I turned it over and it was full of carbs. And then I turned it back over and it said, 5 net carbs on the product. And I'm like, okay, what's going on here? Net carbs? What is this? Well, magically, the industry decided on their own. And you see, you don't need the FDA's approval on this. They could just do whatever they want because they pay for the FDA. So, it's the prisoners are basically running the asylum.
Huh.
You can say, okay, this has 25 carbs in it, but there's 15 grams of fiber. So magically, we're just going to subtract the 15 grams from the 25 and we're going to say it's 10 net carbs. Right now, it doesn't look so bad. Tell that to your liver. You think your liver is going to go, oh, wait, there was some fiber in this. We're going to separate this. This doesn't count. It just doesn't work that way. And then I started seeing the same thing, with the sugars. They were subtracting all the sugar alcohols and everything from the total. This is completely made up out of whole cloth, all of it. And we started calling that dirty keto, right? And because I talk to people, and Philip knows this because sometimes when people have heart problems, I send them right to him. I mean, hey, go, you need to go to Philip Ovadia. He's the guy. But when I would talk to people, they would say, hey, I've lost 90 pounds. I still have another 75 pounds to go. And my weight loss has stopped in its tracks. As a matter of fact, I'm gaining weight. And when I would interview them, inevitably, they were all using these products, these keto products, these dirty keto products. And when I would explain to them, go off of that and you'll start losing weight again. And everyone would, like literally every one of them would, right? That's when I started going, wow, they're buying into this. And I started Googling and trying to figure out which government agency is certifying this. And there's no government agency at all, as you saw in the movie, right? It's just a bunch of people got together and said, hey, let's get this keto certification and we'll sell it to anyone. You could be selling a bowl of sugar. And if you want to pay for that labeling, they'll give it to you pretty much, right? That's the way it works.
Has to be net sugar, I guess, somehow. But yeah, you're right. And it really gets us back to that, fundamental truth of, you really got to be eating just real food. And
Yeah.
whatever dietary camp you want to be in, when that starts to get into more and more processed food, it leads us to bad places. And I think that's the pattern that we really see over and over again. Like you said, there's a big difference between a whole food plant-based diet and the vegan diet, these days. And we see it with each of these things. And even unfortunately, Dr. Atkins, was that brand has been corrupted, and you see all the processed food that are labeled Atkins. I commend you for, turning the lens sort of on your camp, we'll call it, in the keto camp. But I think it's an important warning for all of us that are involved in this low carb space, that we can't get far away from that central messaging of just eat real food first and foremost.
Yeah, a greater truth has never been spoken. It's so simple to do it right. Yet we've tried, look, whenever you give anyone a diet, whenever you put the word, that's why I always call NSNG a lifestyle. And by the way, every company has tried to get me to let them license NSNG. And I looked at a few of them and looked at the product and went, okay, this product is NSNG right now. So, and by the way, I would have like Ferrari money if I would license NSNG because I own that brand. But when I get my attorney to look at it, he always tells me, well, listen, they can change this product the next day, the day after you do this, and you cannot take the license back for X amount of time. So that, if you give it to them for 3 years or 2 years or whatever, they can change the price. And I'll tell them, can you take this out of the contract? And every single one of them says, no, can do, because we want to sell this company in 6 months to a bigger company, and then they could do whatever they want. And we cannot take that language out. Right. So that's why I'll never have a Ferrari, because I don't want a Ferrari, but you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I will never have helicopter money because there, no one will take that clause out. They refuse to. Period. It's crazy, but that's the world we live in. Money talks, and I'm not willing to compromise my brand, at least. But they don't really need my brand. They can go just get keto certified and just go that way, you know?
I've been pondering the whole healthcare mess. And, once you start to exit that system, it becomes clearer and clearer and clearer how all the pieces are interlocking and self-reinforcing. And I'm talking specifically about the food industry, the insurance industry, the health insurance industry, the pharmaceutical industry, and the hospital industry. Um, and I've been trying to find ways to communicate succinctly, quickly, clearly what's what takes many many words, trying to say it tightly. And it's fascinating to me that even in this space, that the chase for the big bucks has corrupted what was initially just a pursuit of genuine health. I don't know why I should be amazed, but I don't even have a question, Vinny. I'm just
No, look, I feel your pain. I tell people, go watch that movie on the Sackler family, or the documentary on the Sacklers, and see what they did. How they came up with this pain chart and got everyone hooked on this, these class C narcotics, right? And then once you can't get them anymore, these people end up on the street on heroin. But they said, hey, these things are not addictive. You could take these things, and it wasn't even based on a study at all, right? Yet that got pushed through, and they were the ones. And you go into a doctor's office, you see that pain chart, 1 through
yeah,
5,
yeah.
no pain, a little pain, then you see the person squeezing their eyes. That's a lot of pain. Well, pain is relative. We don't know how much pain you might have been in, and you know, so you have that problem. So if you can take the Sacklers, or there's a great movie if you just want to watch a movie with a beautiful woman in it, Anne Hathaway, called Love and Other Drugs. Have you ever seen that movie?
Not, no.
It's another one where she's dying of something, and she meets a drug rep, and it was right when the blue pill, the blue pill that guys take, the erection
Yeah,
pill. I can't think of the name of it.
Viagra.
Thank you. You could tell I don't need it yet because I can't tell you the name, but I'm sure it's coming soon. but it was, she couldn't get the drug she needed for, a real illness, yet you were able to get this other drug that, did nothing except allowed older men to have more sex, right? The movie is amazing. And I tell people, watch these type of movies. Watch what happened with the Sackler family. There's a movie and a documentary, and you'll see, oh, wait, if it's happening with that, it's happening with everything, right? It's just an industry that's never going to stop. And, we see it all the time, because back when I was just doing a podcast and I wrote a book, and then the book became a best-selling book and all of that, we watched everything on the internet. It was like a hockey stick for me. We saw my numbers go up. Like, you've never seen anyone climb so fast, right? Then when I started getting into the mainstream by putting out popular documentaries, all of a sudden my Wikipedia went away. Wikipedia just wiped me off of Wikipedia. And this makes me sound like I need a tinfoil hat, but these are facts. For your audience, my wife is a bit of a celebrity. They removed me from being her husband on her Wikipedia. My hometown, like every hometown has a Wikipedia. I was one of the famous people and when you grow up in a town of 5,000 people, it's not very hard to become famous. So I was one of the they wiped me off of that, right? So I was completely wiped from that. Meta went after me, which is Facebook and Instagram. I used to have over 100,000 followers on Instagram. Now I have like 94,000. They keep taking them away. And then people write to me and go, hey, why did you take me off of Instagram? It's like, I never touch Instagram. I'm just putting information up. So if you don't think this is real, and look, if you're a vegan or someone listens, go on, that's good. That's great. Guys like you need to be, silenced. Wait till they come after you, right? They say, I didn't say, they came after this group. I didn't say anything. They went after that. They went after the Jews. I didn't say anything. Then they came after me. And if you don't think it's going to happen to you, just don't say anything now and watch what happens. But that's what's happening in real time. They literally go after people like me once we make a splash.
Oh,
Yeah. So, Vinny, you've now spent 30 plus years, pissing in the ocean as it is. What do you think it's making a difference? Where do we go? What have you seen, and where do you think we need to go? How do we get off the fence post to kind of get back to where you started?
The answer is, I don't know. About 1 year ago right now, the great Nina Teicholz was staying with us for several days. And one night, Nina and I were sitting out on my patio, and we decided to tie on a drink. And we're sitting there having a drink, and we started going, are we making a difference? Right? Or is anyone, because Nina has done more work in the space than anyone, right? Maybe her and Zoe Horcombe. I don't know if you guys have those two on your show, but I'm fascinated with both of those women and the tireless efforts that they put out, right? And really don't get paid for it. And I was like, Nina, are we making a difference at all? Like I get to that point sometimes.
yeah.
Because God only knows I'm not doing this for money, right? I'm not getting rich doing this. So you're sitting there going, and Nina's husband has said to her, why are you still doing this? We don't make any money by doing this. If you put this kind of effort into anything else, you would be rich, right? The answer is we're the type of people that we have to right a wrong, right? That's all we're doing. We're trying to right a wrong. And we sit there and have a drink and go, are we doing anything? Has anything changed? And the answer is, I don't know. I don't know how to get off of that fence post at all. And I don't think Nina knows how, right? But here we are, and speaking of Nina, she got called to testify in Timothy Noakes' trial. Are you guys familiar with Dr. Tim Noakes and what happened to him?
Yeah.
No, I'm not. I
know this. We'll give a little bit of the background for the audience.
Okay. All right. I hope you're sitting down, Jack. You look like you're sitting down
I
because
am
what
sitting
you're going
down.
to say, the truth is stranger than fiction. Dr. Tim Noakes, who's probably done more studies than any other doctor, he's in South Africa. He's written a famous book that's been republished and re-upped like 7 different times called The Law of Running. And
Oh, yes, yes.
yeah, he's done more than anyone else in this field. Tim has been on my show probably a dozen times. Well, they were trying to go after Tim. So one night they got this woman to pretend she was just trying to get information for her kid, and it was the tweet heard around the world. And I'm paraphrasing. The tweet was, "Hey, my kid is coming off of breast milk, and I want to put my kid on solid food. What is the best way to feed my kid?" And he goes, "Well, you know." grind up vegetables and beef, and that's the best. You're going to get all the nutrients you need from vegetables and beef. And that was the big gotcha moment that he told the mother to give a kid beef. He was taken to trial in South Africa. It cost the South African government, and I'm not exaggerating, over $1 million. I want to say $1.5 million to try this guy. And they brought in people like Zoe Harcombe and Nina Teichels and all these people. As a matter of fact, Nina was telling me the same people that had her on the stand that was, saying, she was giving her testimony, and they were trying to trip her up. They would come to her in the hallway and say, "Hey, would you mind signing my book for me? I'm a huge fan." Right. That's how it was it was just kangaroo court. Right. It was just crazy. Well, they found Tim Noakes innocent, and that wasn't good enough. They put him up on trial. There's no such thing as no double jeopardy, I guess. There, they did it again. They figured it would just run him out of money. They put him up on trial. It cost another $1.5 million, and they tried to convict him again of the same thing. And again, a jury found him innocent. You can't make this stuff up. And I see the look on your face right now. And I don't know if you saw my first movie, but the same thing happened to this doctor in New Zealand, in Tasmania, right?
Gary Fettke.
Gary Fettke, same exact thing. The government spent millions to try to, you know, just censure this guy, and they couldn't. And they finally dropped everything. And we think it's because it was right before my movie came out. We had to go back and put something at the end of the movie and say, "Hey, they finally let this guy go." But there was this whole thing of this big movie that was going to come out showing exactly, and we had the footage. And Philip, you've seen the movie. We had the footage and everything of that trial in the movie, right? It's like you're sitting there and I see the look on your face, Jack. You can't believe what I'm telling
Yeah.
you.
Well,
These are true
sadly, I
stories.
can believe it, but it's still it's so extraordinarily painful to contemplate that this is, in fact, what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah. You can't make this stuff up. That's what I always tell people. You cannot make it up.
You know, I completely unrelated to the specifics of health. Um, I've I found myself most of my life tilting at windmills. That phrase comes from um, Miguel Cervantes' book, Don Quixote, which is considered the first novel in the history of Western literature, the original novel. And the idea of tilting at windmills is you're attempting to do something impossible and probably a little bit ridiculous. And yet that idea that Cervantes created uh, closing in on 400 years ago with this knight errant Don Quixote, who was a little bit crazy, um, has inspired dreamers, people who dreamed for a better world for 400 years. And once I learned the story of Don Quixote, I've become fascinated with it. and it was, the story itself was turned into a musical, Man of La Mancha, and the theme music from Man of La Mancha is The Impossible Dream. Most people have heard that.
Sure.
But the lines, the lyrics to that are to dream the impossible dream, to fight the unbeatable foe, to bear the unbearable sorrow, to run where the brave dare not go, to right the unrightable wrong, to love pure and chaste from afar, to try when your arms are too weary, to reach the unreachable star. This is my quest, to follow that star no matter how hopeless, no matter how far, to fight for the right without question or pause, to be willing to march into hell for a heavenly cause. And I think maybe this next bit is what drives people like Vinnie Tortorich and Bill Ovadia, and to a lesser extent me. And I know if I'll only be true to this glorious quest, then my heart will lie peaceful and calm when I'm laid to my rest, and the world will be better for this. That one man, scorned and covered with scars, did try with his last ounce of courage to reach the unreachable star. We may have to put a copyright disclaimer on this episode.
No, I think that song is old enough that you can now recite it without having a problem. That's pretty amazing that you got all the words in there, because I was going through I got to sing it to kind of get the words going, and you just recited it, which was impressive. You know, when I was a kid, my dad was a American history professor, but he taught high school and then he became a principal. But he was also a local politician in a small town. And the reason being was he always felt like, he can do good, right? And he was elected to office for well over 20 years. Not many politicians can do that, right? He didn't have any money behind him or anything. He just kind of always did the right thing. And I remember growing up and always seeing our name on the headline of the local paper, and it wasn't always good, right?
Yeah.
Tortorich did this, or Tortorich did that. I remember, as a kid, when you walk into a restaurant and someone would go, he's a Tortorich. You know that they're not saying that in a good way, even when you're a kid, because my daddy, he did some pretty unsavory things where he was trying to help the poor people, right? And because he was poor, my dad grew up very poor, so he was trying to always help the poor people, and not everybody is into that. But the one thing I took from having a father who was a local politician was to never become a politician, right? I never,
Yeah.
because as my dad said, no matter what you do, half of the people are going to hate you. That's just a fact. And he was fine with that. He was like, you're going to always upset half of the people. And I said, I don't want to, man, I never want to do that. And when I was getting my degree in exercise physiology, and I also got a secondary education degree, because I figured, hell, I'm going to have to do something with this degree. And, I don't think anyone else was going to hire me. So at the end, I went, I better become a teacher also, which I never used. But Tulane University came to me and said, hey, listen, um, you made the dean's list 7 out of 8 semesters. I'm bragging right now, Jack. They said, you made the dean's list and you were on the football team. You're a smart guy. We will help you. We will pay for you to take the LSAT, and you will be welcome to come to law school here at Tulane. And I said, look, I've been broke for way too long. I need to get out and work. I was already selling cars and I had a real estate license. I had a few things I was doing. I was making money as my senior year in college. And they were like, well, what are you going to do? And I said, I don't know. I'll probably be a PE teacher or something. And I remember them saying to me, you're going to waste your life doing that? And I said, well, why is that a wasted life? I would find it to be a wasted life if I was sitting in a cubicle reading all day and charging billable hours. I don't see that as a career, right? And I'll be dealing with conflict for the rest of my life. I hate conflict. But here I am at 61 years old, dealing with conflict, left, right, and center. And it's exactly what I never wanted to do. I never wanted to become my father. As much as I love him, I never wanted to become the guy. And I'm doing exactly what he did. I'm fighting a fight. And I'm, again, turtle, fence post, I'm not sure why or how, but here we are.
I'm imagining the title of this episode, The Turtle on the Fence Post. How did I get here?
Yeah. Well, certainly not a wasted life. So let's talk about the details of the documentary. I know as we're recording this on June 4th, it was supposed to be released a week or two ago, but kind of held up in the process. So maybe just let people know where they'll ultimately be able to find it, probably by the time this is out in a few weeks. And how they can get Dirty Keto.
Yeah, my first three documentaries were released through Gravitas Ventures. I decided, and by the way, still love those guys. They've done well by me. They do wide releases on these documentaries. There's always on like 70 different VODs around the world and airplanes and everything else. I decided to just put this one on Amazon. Amazon is the biggest shelf space in the world. And my other documentaries are there. They do well on Amazon. It was supposed to come out, as you said, Philip, on the 30th. It did not drop on that date. As of the 4th, it still has not dropped. I'm hoping it drops in the next day or two. Amazon is not giving me any reason as to why it's not dropped yet, other than we finally got a message back from them. So I don't think anything nefarious is happening because Amazon is not like Meta or anyone else. All they care about is it's a meritocracy. They want to sell stuff, right? They wrote back and said, we are quite simply backed up, right? Because they have to approve the movie before they put it up, right? And they said, we're quite frankly backed up and your movie is not up yet. Sorry. But they're Amazon. They can do whatever they want. But right now, folks, the only place you will be able to get Dirty Keto is on Amazon.com. So please go there. They did not allow me to do a pre-order or any of that good stuff, but you can go there and get the movie. And it should, like, when is this coming out? Do you know?
Well,
2 weeks, I think.
we're scheduled for June 18th.
If it's not out by then, I will commit Harry Carey. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it should be out by then.
All right, very good. Well, I watched it today. It was I had two thoughts. Number one, I already mentioned, why did Vinny feel the need to make this? But the second thought was, this is an extraordinarily well done show, a very worthwhile use of my time. I spent an hour sitting and watching it. You didn't say much of anything that I hadn't already heard before, but like so many things in life, there comes a moment when it all clicks, and I had a few of those where it all just kind of clicked. So I can recommend it wholeheartedly. In fact, I may recommend it wholeheartedly to my circle of friends.
Yeah, and I certainly second that. Yeah, certainly second. I think it was very well done. Like I said, I think it said a lot of things that maybe many of us have been thinking about, in this space, but needed to be said so that we can make some changes. And I hope it does get people thinking a little bit about, again, just because something says makes claims, we really do need to question those claims and be a little bit more skeptical, perhaps, when it comes to kind of our food in general.
You know what? The thought just occurred to me, and I've said this in other places, but there's going to be pushback from folks that say, well, I got to trust somebody. You can't do your own research on everything. You have to trust somebody. And ultimately, I think we got into this mess that we're in, not because we chose to trust people, but more accurately, because we were persuaded to stop taking responsibility for our own health individually. We we abdicated our responsibility to ourselves for our own health. And I think the bottom line is it all starts with you got to take responsibility for your own health.
Yeah. You know, look, I mean, when people do, we hear this all the time. I'll hear people say, well, I've done my research, which means you went to Google and read stuff on the first page where most of the stuff is sponsored. And I challenged a friend one time. I said, I think I always use something that's really not controversial. Like I said, motorcycles, motorcycles are bad for your health because you can crash and be paralyzed or be killed instantly. And I'm a guy who rode motorcycles my entire life until I turned 52. And I promised my wife, I'm done. Right. So I made it that far without being maimed. But that's not the truth behind a lot of people who I rode with over the years. And I would always say, anytime you walk into a business with a motorcycle helmet in your hand, people, the first thing they say is, hey, do you ride? No, I just like to walk around with this helmet and this big leather jacket because it makes me look cool. Of course I ride. And the first thing they'll say is, yeah, my friend died riding. It's like everyone tells you this while you're riding a motorcycle. But if you went to Google, I can, within one page, I can Google myself correct by saying motorcycles are very bad for your health. And then if I wanted to, I can Google myself correct by saying motorcycles are the healthiest way to get around. And you can go either way on any subject and get exactly, you can make up a truth, but there's a universal truth that's out there that's in the middle. And that's the part where people get hung up. They don't want the real truth. They just want to be right. And the Google machine is a great way that you can make yourself right no matter what you're talking about. You want to be a vegan? You can make yourself right. You want to be a carnivore? You can make yourself right. My favorite is we were talking about paleo, or I was talking about paleo earlier. The Paleolithic diet is pretty good, right? It's what people ate back in the Paleolithic era. Great. Well, what happens? People go, well, hang on. Were honeybees around back in the paleo? Yeah, I think honeybees were around. That means we can eat honey, right? You can Google yourself right on anything. And that's the part people miss out on. They think they're doing research and they're not. They're reading what Google wants you to read. And remember what I just said. I'm censored on those things, right? They don't want people to see my message because it doesn't follow the trajectory of what they want you to do. And who they are, I don't know, right? But if you're not part of the they program, you're everyone else and you don't count.
I think we've got our mic drop moment, and we've been going probably a little long. We've been keeping you probably a little longer than we should have. In fact, I'm quoting you right now. Google is designed to allow anyone to prove their own point of view. I love that. All right. Well, as always, we'll make sure that contact information for Vinnie Tortorich shows up in the show notes. If his latest documentary, Dirty Keto, actually drops prior to the date that this show is published, we'll have a link to that as well. Bill, any last words?
Just keep up the great work, Vinny. We're all better because of it.
Thank you, sir. And thank you guys for having me on. This is always great.
Well, I appreciate your work as well. And it's just fun to have you back. So
thanks, Jack.
All right. Well, for Vinnie Tortorich and Dr. Philip Ovadia, this has been Stay Off My Operating Table, and we'll talk to you next time.